Hi there, and welcome to today's webcast, Smarter Packet Capture for Security Teams. I'm John Gamble, Director of Product Marketing here at Corelight, and I'm glad that you could join us today. Let's get started. A little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm Director of Product Marketing here at Corelight. I've been at Corelight 4 years, and I've spent my career in the InfoSec space representing security products, ID verification products, and privacy technology products, and most recently in the mobile endpoint space at Lookout. And while I'm on the marketing side of the business, I've been in security for 12 years now, and I try to get as technical as I can to do my job. And believe it or not, one of my first jobs when I got started, they taught me how to use Wireshark, and they gave me a project to do some packet sniffing of applications to understand what kind of data flows were occurring over the wire from these applications, and to basically inventory that for a project. And I spent a couple months learning to use the Wireshark tool and running this project and packaging up the report. So I actually, kind of my first introduction to the security world, as it were, was packet capture oriented. So it's neat for me to come today full circle to talk to you about a really special product that Corelight has developed, a security purpose-built packet capture solution that I think, as you'll see, solves a lot of the challenges with some of the more traditional approaches or tools that security teams are reliant on today for packet capture. And so I just give you that personal anecdote because it's especially fun for me today to be on this presentation talking to you, because I do know firsthand a little bit about some of the challenges with packet capture and packet analysis from my first job. And so I'm sure some of you on the phone are packet experts with much greater expertise than me, and I welcome your questions. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's presentation will be recorded and slide copies will be made available. So if you have to jump early or want to share with a colleague, you can do so. I will take questions. I'm going to hold them until the end, but you're welcome to use the questions tab of your GoToWebinar control panel at any time to type a question in. It's private. I will see it, and we'll save Q&A for the end of this presentation. So agenda, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I want to talk a little bit about packets as security evidence. I want to talk about some of the traditional pain points that come from kind of the way that most packet capture has been done historically over the last 2 decades in packet analysis from a security perspective. Then I want to talk about Corelight Smart PCAP, which is an exciting new packet capture product that Corelight has introduced to support our network detection and response platform. We'll go into a bit about the functionality and the benefits of that platform and that capability with Smart PCAP. And then I'll do a walkthrough demo to show you exactly how the product works and some of the user interface. And then we'll save some time at the end for Q&A, as I mentioned. And again, at any point, feel free to ask questions in the questions tab. I'll see them and we'll hopefully have time at the end of this presentation. So let's talk about packets as security evidence. To brutally oversimplify the job of security teams and incident response and threat hunters and members of a SOC, there's really 2 initial starting points for kind of figuring out if something is wrong from a network perspective, right? It could be an alert-driven trigger, whether that's a signature, an intel hit, a behavioral rule set, or a ML-based algorithm firing an alert. Something, some logic is telling you that something is wrong and you need to investigate. Or it's a proactive exercise, right? It's a hunting exercise. You as an analyst are sitting there, hypothesizing ways that you might be attacked, hypothesizing how those attacks would play out on a network, and what signals and what evidence you would look for to validate if those attacks are occurring. And where do you go next is the big question, right? Security evidence. You need evidence to triage and investigate the alerts, and you need evidence to be able to hunt and validate your hypotheses. Lots of people go to logs as their first stop. You can get logs from a wide variety of sources on the network. You can generally pull them off of appliances like DNS server logs or NetFlow off of your routers. There's other more kind of holistic and comprehensive network logging solutions, and we'll talk a little bit about Corlight's offering there today. But there's a lot of different types of network logs that analysts often go to answer these burning questions that an alert raises or that a hunt hypothesis raises. But of course, the final backstop, the backstop of last resort, the ultimate kind of answer, sometimes occurs at the packet level, right? Logs are, in a way, abstractions, right, of what's happening at a packet level. They're summarizations of specific elements of the packet stream that are kind of bottled up, packaged in a neat kind of data format for an analyst. But packets are, of course, the raw machine code to machine code talking of actual network traffic. And sometimes the log depth is not sufficient to answer some of these burning questions, and you will need to go to that packet level. So, I think Corelite's perspective here is that, logs and packets are both, necessary for strong kind of security evidence footprints and to enable those workflows, those alert-driven and those hunt-driven workflows. And I think the point here that I want to make is, having talked to a number of people in the industry over the years and gone to trade shows and met with customers and sat actually with some of the SOCs around the world and talked to them about their jobs, I think it's not uncommon for some folks to kind of take that position, right? You've seen it in stickers or T-shirts handed out at DEF CON. You may have seen it on a laptop. PCAP or it didn't happen, right? This idea that if it didn't occur in the packets and you don't have the packets to show me, well, I'm going to assume that it didn't happen. Yeah, packets are that ultimate source of truth, right? It doesn't get deeper than packets. But the point that I want to make here is I would encourage the audience, if you are oriented towards that kind of point of view here, is to broaden that perspective a little bit. And with the right logs, the right network logs, I think you can expand this mentality to say PCAP or logs, the right logs, or it didn't happen. And we'll talk about some of those use cases, but this isn't just me telling you this as a marketer. I've talked to customers who firmly believe in that latter perspective, where they've come to rely on some of the logging that sits kind of above that packet layer detail to resolve, a majority of their incidents. They don't need to go to the packet level detail, but when they do, they have those packets available and they have that depth at their fingertips at the packet level that they need. So let's talk now about some of the pain points that I've heard about in the market from talking to customers that can come from traditional, full or continuous packet capture solutions from a security perspective. Well, there's a storage cost challenge. I think that's top of mind for pretty much all folks who do packet capture today. I think everybody that does packet capture today, if they could afford more storage and longer look back periods, they would. But it really comes down to a trade-off of budget and storage limitations versus historical look back capabilities. But this is being this trade-off, right? That security teams have to make, that organizations have to make about packet capture is only getting kind of worse, right? Because from a network speeds perspective, right, throughputs are only increasing, right? The trend is up and to the right, right? 40 gig, we're now at 100 gig. We're starting to see 400 gig data centers. Just the volume and velocity of network data year over year continues to climb. And that's due to any number of reasons, right? Huge data sets right now with machine learning applications that are just monstrously large data sets that need to be transmitted through networks today. That's super high definition video, right? I mean, there's so many different modern use cases that are driving the need for higher network speeds and higher throughput capacity, but it makes the capture challenge really tough because the fire hose you're trying to drink from is only getting bigger and more powerful, making it even more challenging for you to figure out how to store these packets and what you can afford and what the trade-off is. And then on the storage side, right, you might be storing gigabytes worth of PCAP. You might be storing terabytes. You might have invested in a commercial packet capture solution and be storing terabytes worth. Probably none of you on the call are storing petabytes worth of packet capture. But as these network speeds and the volume of network traffic increases, right, it starts to become a petabyte problem if you want to try to store network traffic at the same historic timescale as you have previously. And in fact, there are a few rare organizations out there that are storing network traffic at the petabyte level, but you probably don't have the budget of the NSA to do so, right? And so, the storage challenge from a traditional full packet capture perspective is fundamentally one of cost and kind of rack center, physical space limitations, right? Those are the two kind of pain points that increase the more you want to store. And so security teams make these trade-offs where they would like, 30 days worth of packet level visibility, but the compromise, right, is 7 days trailing, because that's what they can afford and that's what they can store in their rack space. The look back challenge, I alluded to it. It's a function of the cost and storage challenge, but it has particular pain from a security point of view, right? Because it's not just security teams that are using packet capture. Packet capture is also widely useful to IT use cases, right? Network performance monitoring use cases. Many of the packet capture tools out there, the commercial ones today, are oriented, or their kind of DNA design is around an IT use case. Security teams use them because they're available, but some of them are kind of fundamentally designed around NPM IT use cases. So the look back challenge, right? The limitation on historical visibility in terms of how far you can go back in time from a packet perspective on your network. Full packet capture, continuous packet capture solutions. We talk to customers that have hours worth of visibility, days, weeks, and in very rare cases, a couple weeks, but that seems to be quite rare. On average, I think you're talking about days to weeks versus visibility in a current kind of organization, right? From a packet capture perspective. That's okay from an IT perspective, because if you think about it, IT problems from a network perspective tend to be surfaced in real time, right? Hey, I'm getting a 404 error, I'm filing a help desk ticket. Hey, my email is not working, I'm not receiving any email. Those tend to be immediately surfaced as issues, which means that from an IT perspective, being able to go back in time a few hours, a few days, a few weeks on your network and look at the packets to understand what happened, that's fine, because you don't need to go back in time more than that. No one's filing a help desk ticket that says, hey, 3 months ago on a Tuesday, my email wasn't working. Could you look into that? That's just not an IT help desk ticket that gets filed. But from a security perspective, we need to go back in time in many investigations much farther, especially when we're dealing with advanced attacks that are moving low and slow, and the initial intrusion and kind of breakthrough where they establish a foothold might have happened months in the past, right? That's not uncommon to see. Especially with sophisticated, advanced adversaries and zero-day exploits. That's often the pattern we observe. Packets don't help you there from a security perspective, because the traditional approach to full PCAP doesn't really support that use case. It's great for IT. It's often good for security, as long as the problem that you're dealing with happened to have occurred in the last few hours, days, or maybe weeks, if you can afford that much. The image there on right, I'm sure many of you recognize, but in case you didn't, that's just the screenshot from the DeLorean from Back to the Future. But the point here, right, is that security is fundamentally an exercise in reconstructive chronology, right? You're trying to understand what happened and how to fix it. And security teams need to be able to go back in time in their DeLorean, so to speak, much farther in the past relative to IT teams. And that's a pain point, I would say, in traditional packet capture solutions. And that's why when we talk to customers, we always hear, boy, we wish we could have more visibility from a packet perspective, but we just can't afford it. And of course, yeah, with those little skulls there, when you're dealing with a C2 connection from 8 weeks ago, you're not going to have packets on that communication. There's also security usability challenges that kind of traditional packet capture solutions have. And generally speaking, packets don't play well, if at all, with modern SIEM solutions, right? You can't send packets to Splunk. That's not something that Splunk supports. What you sometimes find is commercial solutions that have an integrated pane of glass where the platform can support packet capture and acts as a SIEM or is a commercial SIEM. So it's kind of an all-in-one platform. And yes, you can pivot from alert to packets from within those commercial platforms, but it's a very proprietary black box solution. It's often very difficult or impossible to get external data sources into those black box systems, right? They weren't designed to be full-fledged SIEMs in the way that Splunk or Elastic were designed to flexibly ingest pretty much any data source that you can throw at it. And so for SOCs and security teams that really want to adopt kind of a single data lake approach, right? This idea that you put all of the data relevant to your security workflows in a single system, ideally. Few teams achieve it, but it is certainly a goal that drives a lot of design decisions. You're probably going to want to use a modern SIEM like Splunk or Elastic. And those SIEMs don't ingest, store, or otherwise expose packets. And that means that you're pivoting, right? It's a chair swivel in many cases between systems, right? So much of the work of a security investigator is pivoting between panes of glass. And you want to limit those panes of glass because that's where you can lose the thread. That's where you lose time. And so that's a major usability pain point for a lot of modern packet capture solutions, which is that they don't support modern SIEM workflows. But there's other usability challenges as well beyond this kind of big macro issue. IT often controls the packet capture choke point, and the filtration of the packets being captured, right? A lot of this gets mediated depending on the solution and the implementation at the packet broker layer or at a piece of network infrastructure that the security team doesn't have direct control over. So sometimes that works out in the security team's favor, but often you're going to run into situations where something's changed in your network profile, your network traffic profile, and you need to be capturing a new set of packets that your current configuration isn't capturing. That's not something you can directly change as a security team member. You need to go to the IT team and you need to work with them to get the configuration changed. That can be pain, and sometimes that can take a while, as you probably know in security. So often, depending on the implementation, capture control is out of your hands as a security person. Best case scenario, you do have direct control over the packet capture choke points and the filters on what packets you're capturing. But what I found in talking to customers and looking very closely at a lot of the commercial solutions out there is that the filtration mechanisms for selectively kind of capturing certain streams but not others can be pretty challenging to set up. Some of them are really challenging to set up. And they're also challenging to maintain because a lot of them are very fixed filters that don't dynamically adapt to traffic profiles, right? So you might want to capture encrypted traffic that you have keys for, but if you're only looking at a specific port, and some of that traffic happens to go to a different port, that rule is not going to capture that traffic, right? That's what I mean in terms of maintenance. Which brings me to the last kind of usability pain point here, right? Which is that a lot of the traditional packet capture solutions out there, the selective packet capture rules are ultimately pretty brittle. You might say that you want to capture, a certain traffic stream, right, or a certain protocol, let's say, right? And so you say, I want to filter on this port, capture all packets at this byte depth on this port. You can do that in a lot of commercial packet capture solutions. But if that type of protocol happens to switch ports and be seen somewhere else in your environment, that brittle kind of port number focused capture isn't going to track, isn't going to follow, and isn't going to capture those packets. And so you do see adversaries recognizing that kind of these fixed perimeter-based decisions, whether that's a firewall or a packet capture kind of through a packet broker, I'll go over here because they're not looking, right? I'll route my traffic over here because they're not monitoring this area of my network. And so ideally you want something that's more dynamic and that can more kind of smartly follow the traffic you want to capture around the network, no matter where it occurs. So those are the pain points that I've heard over the years, talking to customers and through research and looking kind of very closely at some of the commercial solutions. And that's exactly why Corelight set out to build something different and to build something better and to build something smarter for security teams. Because I think on the whole, if I look at the market, what I see is a lot of packet capture solutions that were never really designed for security teams in mind. Yeah, they certainly support security use cases, and yes, they have security integrations, and yes, they have some filtration capabilities. But often, if you kind of look at the design DNA of those platforms, it's IT focused and NPM focused, and that has a lot of drawbacks for security. And Corelight is a security company. We're a network detection and response company, and we wanted to solve these pain points that we just talked about by building something purpose-built exclusively for security use cases, which is what we did. So let's look at Smart PCAP. Before I dive into the product functionality, it's important for me to ground it in our broader platform and product portfolio, because some of the things I'm going to talk about won't make sense to you if you're not familiar with Corelight unless you have that grounding. So we will dive into Smart PCAP in a minute, but let's just take a step back and frame where this capability that we've developed lives within our platform. So first of all, 30,000 foot view, right? Corelight is an NDR vendor, network detection and response. We form a crucial leg of the three-legged stool, otherwise known as the SOC triad, right? Or XDR, depending on which analyst you're asking. Right, Corelight is that left-hand side of the equation here. And our customers are building this basic design pattern that you see here on screen, right? They're marrying best-of-breed NDR Corelight with best-of-breed EDR technology with best-of-breed SIEM. And they have a single data lake approach for their endpoints and their network surfaces to do their analysis, to do their hunts, to generate alerts on. And it's a far more efficient and a far more effective way to reduce risk in your environment, because you're not pivoting between panes of glass, and you're not dropping huge coverage areas between those pivots and between those various systems that were never designed to talk well. It's a single consolidated data lake approach to solving security. It's a data-driven approach to security. And so Corlight's platform as an NDR platform sits as that key network stool, leg of the stool. Our platform is fundamentally open, and you'll hear me refer to this as open NDR, open network detection and response. And it's open for a couple reasons. It's open because it's comprised of open source technology under the hood, open source Zeek, a network security monitoring tool, open source Suricata, an open source IDS, IPS technology, and it's composed of smart PCAP, which is Corlight's packet capture technology. It's also open because we aim to support the extensibility, the editing kind of capability that open source supports, right? Open source is designed for creativity, is designed for extension, is designed for customization, right? There's so much you can do with open source technology because it's open and you can modify it to your organization's needs. And that's exactly what our customers do. And we aim to support that in our platform and support the fundamental openness of those technologies, those open source technologies. And so it allows a customer, right, to create something like an integration with their help desk ticketing system, build a custom detection with Corlight's platform, a custom log, and integrate all of it such that it's a closed loop system that automatically opens an IT help desk ticket if it sees an issue, right? It's that kind of customization, that kind of openness that Corelight supports that is fairly differentiated in the market from an NDR perspective. A lot of the vendors out there are fairly proprietary, locked down, and hard to modify in that way. And it supports the SOC throughout the investigative lifecycle, right? From alert to investigation to validation, right? And it's those key technologies here that I mentioned under the hood of Corelight that allows analysts to get high fidelity alerts, just the evidence they need in just the place they need it to make fast decisions. And Smart PCAP, of course, is the third part of that, right? And where does it sit? Where does our platform sit, right? It doesn't sit in a vacuum. It sits in a design pattern, right, of network mirroring, traffic mirroring technology below us, or above us, I should say, technically, and downstream from us, SIEM, analytical technology, right? Corelight is the middle transformational layer that takes all of the raw network traffic that's mirrored by a packet broker in a physical network or by a virtual tap in a cloud environment like AWS, takes that raw packets and transforms it into usable security evidence, insight detections to feed that investigative, that security workflow lifecycle in whatever pane of glass the customer wants, whether that's Splunk, Elastic, Chronicle, Exabeam, Humio, ArcSight, Securonix, I could go on. We have customers using dozens of different data lake or SIEM technologies downstream from us to ingest the data and the detections and the insight that we provide them. I alluded to some of these benefits of the openness of our platform that I think really differentiates us in the market. But again, open source, open access, and open to extension. It gives you, the customer, a lot more choice, a lot more control, and allows you really to future-proof for planning, right? You want to switch a SIEM next year or next quarter, you've got a SIEM replacement project, great. We can support you in that because our data can go in whatever SIEM that you want it to go in. You want to drive more efficient workflows by connecting two systems together, you can do that with our platform, et cetera, et cetera. So I would encourage you, if you haven't previously considered open core security technologies, to really strongly think about some of the benefits that can come from taking this approach. And it's not just NDR, right? There's open source security technology across the security stack, beyond network and endpoint, et cetera. There's really a lot of advantages that come from taking this approach. Okay, so you have that grounding in our platform. You hopefully kind of understand where we fit in your security stack. Let's go back to Smart PCAP. and talk about how this product works. So I mentioned all those pains previously that we found in the security landscape. Customers repeat to us, boy, I wish I could store more, but I can't. Boy, I wish I had direct control over the capture, but I don't. Those are the pains that we wanted to solve. And we've done it with Smart PCAP. So what is it? Smart PCAP is an add-on subscription to Corlight's base NDR subscription. It's capacity licensed. It currently runs on our AP3000 sensor. So we have network sensors across all different form factors. We have cloud sensors for cloud environments, virtual sensors. We have a software sensor that's a binary that can run in containerized environments. But we also have appliances. We've got 4 different appliances ranging by throughput speed. And the AP3000 is the current appliance where we support the Smart PCAP functionality. And what it is, at just kind of stripped of all marketing language, what is it actually doing under the hood? It's providing security teams with powerful opt-in packet capture levers that you can configure according to protocol, both protocols that are known by the NDR system and parsed and logged, as well as protocols that are unknown. Traffic that doesn't conform to known protocols, you can specify captures based on that kind of logic. You can also configure it by size, by IP, and by notice. Why would you consider this solution over a traditional packet capture solution? Well, there's a couple key benefits. There's potentially some very dramatic cost savings. And we've run the numbers, we've validated them with real world quotes generated by competitive solutions. There are many situations where if you are needing high storage capacity packet capture solution, Corlight's approach to this problem can result in dramatic cost savings and/or dramatically extend your look-back window, right? Because Smart PCAP is not a full packet capture solution. It is not a continuous packet capture solution. It is a selective, smart packet capture solution. You can actually go back in time much farther on your network from a packet perspective because you are only capturing the packets that you actually need. And that can also drive some significant cost savings as well. And we'll show you this in the demonstration, we've integrated it in your security workflows. So you can actually one-click retrieve the packets you need from your SIEM, from Corlight's log in your SIEM, and I'll show you exactly how that works. So the left-hand side of this slide is meant to represent your network traffic, right? It's a stacked bar chart. 60 to 80% of any typical organizational enterprise traffic is encrypted. Right? A majority of network traffic, it's safe to say, at any given organization is encrypted. And that can range anywhere from 60 to 80% of the traffic. We're not going to capture those packets unless the customer wants to and has the decryption keys for them. And they can do that with our product. They can specify to capture encrypted protocol streams. But in most cases, they're probably not going to do that because in most cases, the customers probably don't have the decryption keys. But you're covered with our platform there because we produce a number of different encrypted traffic logs for encrypted protocols, RDP, Kerberos, SSH, SSL, et cetera, where we're parsing the certificate detail and the nature of the handshake and the nature of the connection that's encrypted without breaking and inspecting it and generating these logs, these SSH logs, these SSL logs that give you as a security analyst actionable information about that connection in the course of your investigation. We also have an encrypted traffic collection that goes beyond just basic kind of logging of the connection itself, the encrypted connection, but actually makes inferred insights, again, without break and inspect, about what's actually happening behind that encryption without decrypting. Again, that's a really important point here. So something like RDP brute forcing behavior appears to be occurring, right? That's an alert Corelight can generate as part of that encrypted traffic collection. Large file transfer activity appears to be occurring over SSH. That's an insight Corelight can give you with that collection, all without break and inspect. So it's quite a lot of insight and coverage from an encrypted traffic perspective for investigations. And generally speaking, those are packets you don't need to be capturing or should be capturing because you don't have the decryption keys. Then you look at file-based traffic in your network, and on average, plus or minus a few percentage points, file-based traffic tends to fall around the 5% of total traffic volume range we find in traffic analyses. And we've got you covered there as well. We have 2 fundamental capabilities for files. File extraction, we can extract and reassemble over 200 different file types from live wire traffic, everything from exe files to PDFs, you name it. We also have a files log that gets generated for every file that crosses the network. And that files log includes things like the MIME type, the file name, the hash, really great detail, metadata detail about that file. So you're covered there on files. You probably don't need to extract packets that are file related either, which leaves us with the box in green. That's what Smart PCAP is designed to go after. It's the 10 to 20% of your traffic that isn't file-based and isn't encrypted, because that's where the maximal packet value can be derived. And so that's what we should be focusing on from a packet capture perspective. Now, we're going to talk about some of the levers, some of the rules, some of the ways it can selectively and smartly filter down that packet stream. But I want to call out one capture rule that we recommend for customers when they're getting started. We sometimes refer to this as the 100% visibility packet capture rule, because if you implement this rule and you're using Corlight's file extraction and logging capabilities and encrypted traffic analysis capabilities, if you enable this rule on Smart PCAP, theoretically, for any connection that crosses your network, you're going to have something, some piece of evidence, whether that's a log, an extracted file, a packet, some piece of evidence related to that connection. Because the rule that we're recommending here is a rule that specifically looks at things that aren't already logged in the system. So it's basically that insurance policy that covers all the stuff that Corelight doesn't already know about and log, which can drive you towards that 100% visibility perspective where you're going to get something for anything that crosses your network. And there's also additional air cover in this recommended rule where you're also capturing the first 2,000 bytes of all unencrypted connections, which can supplement the file extraction and logging capabilities of the system, right? You could be capturing the first 2,000 bytes of a DNS connection in addition to the DNS log that Corelight will generate. And an organization implementing just this singular rule in our Smart PCAP product with, on average, let's call it 7 gigabits per second of daily usage, would be capturing approximately a high average of about 10% of their traffic. With our kind of storage configurations, and we offer a number of different packet capture storage configurations for Smart PCAP, they're looking at approaching 2 months of look-back capability from a packet perspective from the network, right? So if something happened 4 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, you're either going to have a log, a Corelight log for it, or potentially a packet, or potentially an extracted file, or potentially a Corelight insight or alert related to that. And that's kind of where the magic happens, right? That's where we can break this fundamental trade-off, not break, but dramatically alter the balance of power of this fundamental trade-off, right, between storage desires and storage cost realities, right? And you can start to flex and start capturing packets farther back in time than you would otherwise be able to. Capture levers. We offer a lot in our product, Smart PCAP. I mentioned 2 there. I mentioned a rule, and I'm going to show you in the demonstration how we would set that up. But I highlight some notable levers here in this table, right? One of the capture levers we support in our product is unknown TCP and unknown UDP traffic, which means that capture rule orients around any UDP or TCP traffic that Corelight doesn't already log in one of its 40 plus different log types. Protocol violation, another important lever, right? Corelight is analyzing the connection and determining that the protocol as advertised is not conforming to the RFC standard. Something is wrong here. Yes, it's running on 443, or yes, it says it's DNS traffic, but it's actually, when you parse it at a packet level detail, it doesn't match up. Something's wrong here, which can be a good leading indicator of a potential security problem. As well as all unencrypted traffic, right? Smart PCAP, Corelight Smart PCAP is encryption aware, fundamentally encryption aware. And it's encryption aware in a way that's much more robust than some of the encrypted traffic filters you will get in other packet capture solutions, because Corelight identifies traffic wherever it occurs, right? We have dynamic protocol detection capability. So just because something's running on 443, it doesn't mean that it's SSL. It probably is, but it doesn't have to be SSL. And often adversaries will use that loophole to route something like custom C2 traffic over 443 because they know that security teams aren't going to be monitoring that stuff. You want to be capturing that traffic that isn't encrypted and yet it pretends to be, because if you're just filtering on a port you're going to be left empty-handed in a lot of situations where you need to go to the mat and get the packet. You want to be able to track those unencrypted connections wherever they occur, whether that's in protocols that theoretically should be encrypted but aren't, or ports where you would expect encrypted traffic, but that's not happening. But that's just 3 or 4 rather of the many, many capture levers we offer. We offer dozens and dozens and dozens of packet capture levers in our product, and they're configurable. You can use these levers as building blocks to write capture rules. So you can capture by protocol, you can capture by encryption status, you can capture by protocol violation, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll show you how we put some of these in practice and what that looks like. So deployment. I don't want to presume familiarity with our product or even our product space necessarily. Some of you might be newer to NDR and doing some research. How does this actually work in practice? So what you see here is a kind of comprehensive Corelight deployment diagram for all of our products and all the ecosystems we support. But what you really want to focus on here for the purposes of today's presentation is what's highlighted in blue, right? Because we're looking at Smart PCAP specifically here. So Smart PCAP, again, is supported on our Corelight AP3000 physical sensor. That's a 1U sensor you can rack. It requires external data storage, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few slides, but it's a bunch of Dell configured storage arrays that we can support in our product. That's where the actual packets that Smart PCAP captures get sent. When they get recalled, the recall is happening through the actual logging and metadata that the sensor is generating about the network activity that's streamed to the SIEM. So on the right-hand side, you see a bunch of logos, a bunch of data lake, SIEM-like or SIEM environments where customers are consuming our logs, our insights, our detections, our alerts, and they can retrieve the packets directly from the logs themselves via one URL click. And I will show you exactly what that looks like. So from an implementation perspective, right, Corelight is out of band for Smart PCAP. You're hooking in typically to a packet broker, Garland Technologies, cPacket, et cetera. You're hooking our Corelight AP3000 into one of the open ports on that packet broker to get the traffic feed. The Corelight AP3000 is transforming that raw traffic into comprehensive logs, alerts, extracted files, and if you add Smart PCAP to your purchase, smartly captured packets as well, which can be retrieved in the SIEM. What are the benefits of this approach? I think I've been ticking off a number of these in some of the slides, but just to get it on one slide really quick, right? It's an open, extensible NDR platform that gives you a lot more choice and control and helps you future-proof your security decisions and frankly, just drive more efficient security workflows. It's much easier, right, to tune false positives in an open detection environment where you can actually inspect the detection logic under the hood of what's happening and modify it, right? That's just not possible in a lot of black box proprietary platforms. That requires a help desk ticket and a customer success rep to get involved and potentially an engineering side support from your vendor. Smart PCAP specifically, has potentially significant cost savings, depending on your needs, depending on kind of your architecture. But if you're have high capacity storage needs for Smart PCAP and you're relying on a traditional solution today, there's potentially some very significant cost savings for you that can come with this product versus your current solution. Extending your look back window as a security analyst, an investigator with packets, right? You no longer get kneecapped at 7 days or 14 days. You have choice, right? You can alter that and make the decision to say, you know what? I understand that these logs will cover me. I don't need to capture packets over here. I can store, historically, I can store more packet records going farther back than I could with my current solution because of Corlight's approach. It's SIEM workflow integrated, as I just mentioned there, and we'll look at what exactly that looks like. So you don't have to pivot out of a pane of glass. You can do all of your work in your SIEM. The capture levers themselves are really easy to set up, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like in the demo portion of today's presentation. I've looked at some other vendors out there, and boy, it can be tricky to set up some of those capture levers to capture based on specific protocols. Corlight's really, really simple. You can set up capture rules in probably less than 60 seconds, and I'll show you what that looks like. And they're more effective, I would argue, than a lot of the solutions out there because we have dynamic protocol detection, because we are analyzing the traffic and then making capture decisions, right? That's an important workflow design difference between Corelight and a lot of PCAP solutions out there, right? A lot of PCAP solutions out there are architected to capture first and discard after, right? To make that analysis decision after the packet has already been captured. In Corlight's case, the analysis happens first. And then, based on the analysis, packet capture occurs, which can drive a lot more efficient, a lot more robust and resilient packet captures, right? I talked about the port-based brittle filtering. Corelight overcomes those challenges with a smart dynamic capability that is interrogating every traffic stream it sees before making a decision about what to capture. And lastly, deployment. I showed you that screen, the deployment screen prior. There were a lot of logos on that screen. I'm sure it kind of looked a bit overwhelming to some. Those logos represent choice. Typically, our customers have one packet broker, one or two types of Corelight sensors, and one SIEM. I just wanted to show you the breadth of choice that our platform gives you in making those technology investments. But with regards to Smart PCAP, compared to some of the other packet capture solutions out there, it's far more simple than a lot of the really bulky, really hardware intensive, and really complex deployments that some of these full PCAP solutions can require, where you're dealing with a lot of intermediary servers that perform kind of aggregation and indexing functions, right? With Corelight, your SIEM becomes your PCAP manager, right? And that's a very different and better workflow for security teams than trying to manage PCAP in the dedicated, proprietary PCAP vendor UI. It can get tough quickly. And with Corelight, that's experienced in your SIEM, or some very quick changes in Corlight's UI to change the capture levers that you want. So let's look at a demo. I want to show you what it looks like to set up that capture rule, that starter capture rule that I mentioned earlier, what I variously refer to as the 100% coverage capture rule. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set up a new capture rule in Corelight Smart PCAP. We're going to be using the rule to capture all the traffic that Corelight doesn't already parse and log, as well as the first few thousand bytes of all unencrypted traffic in the environment as air cover to supplement the logs and extracted files. So what you're seeing here is the Corelight management UI. Typically, customers are in this UI for deployment, configuration, tuning, and administration, but it's not the UI, notably, where you're doing your analysis, right? That's done in your SIEM. So the UI you're seeing here is for configuration and management of Corelight sensors and Corelight technology. It's not something that you're sitting in to do your analysis. That's going to occur in a platform like Splunk when you connect Corelight to Splunk. So let's take a look at what this looks like to set up this capture rule. As I mentioned, Smart PCAP, Corelight Smart PCAP is an opt-in system, right? So you start here with a blank slate. There are no capture rules. So we'll click on the new capture rule function. We'll click that blue button and we'll get started. And you see the PCAP rule configuration interface. Up at the top, you get to name it. Name it whatever you want. Smart PCAP rule, 100% coverage capture rule, unknown TCP UDP rule, whatever you like. Then we configure kind of the parameters of this rule, right? The layer 3 protocol we want to go after. And we also see right now that levers, there are no levers currently configured for this rule. So let's start there at the lever function. We're going to want to look first at the unknown traffic lever function, right? This is traffic that isn't already logged, parsed and logged. We'll specify TCP. We'll leave the byte depth at 0. That's the default. That means wide open capture. That means capture the entirety of the connection. We'll add another lever to this rule. Same category, unknown traffic. This time, UDP. We'll leave the byte depth alone, default 0, full wide open capture. And we'll add the third and final lever to this rule. This time, lever category is all traffic. We'll toggle the unencrypted traffic only button on. So notice it was off default. We'll toggle it on. So now we're going to capture all unencrypted traffic that Corelight sees. And this time we are going to specify byte depth. We're going to say, let's look at the first 2,000 bytes of that connection. We don't need to capture the entirety of those connections. Why? Because in the vast majority of cases, we're going to have a log that Corelight generates already present to describe that connection and to provide investigative evidence. And in many cases, you're not going to need to go deeper than that log to get the answers you're looking for. Many of our customers tell us that the vast majority of their security investigations, they resolve at the log layer. and it's only a minority of investigations that they need to go to that packet level depth. Now we'll save the rule. We'll hit apply changes. We see the rule there. We'll hit apply changes. We'll apply it to the sensor, and the sensor has been successfully updated. I did a lot of talking there. I did a lot of explaining. It took more than 60 seconds, but you can pretty quickly see just how easy it is to set up a really powerful rule for packet capture. And again, for an organization that's seeing on the order of 7 gigabits per second of daily usage, this policy that we just configured can drive up to 2 months of look back from a packet perspective for you. That's almost certainly longer than you're getting today from a packet look back perspective with your current solution if you're doing packet capture today. Let's take a look at one more demonstration of a packet capture configuration. This time, notice. I haven't talked about this much in today's presentation, but Smart PCAP can also trigger based on alerts. Corlight's framework in the Corlight world, this is known as a notice for the notice log from the Zeek framework on which Corlight is based, the open source Zeek framework. So let's look at a notice log. So we're going to create another capture rule, right? We just created capture rule number 1. We're going to create a second capture rule. And let's say that we want to capture packets when a certain alert fires. And the particular alert we're interested in here is the MITRE Bazaar package, which is an open source Zeek package developed by an engineer over at MITRE that looks for lateral movement in SMB and DC RPC traffic. And it's open source, it's freely available. Corelight embeds it in our platform in a curated section of our packages where we curate some of the best open source packages, this being one of them. So we're going to enable a new packet capture rule, Smart PCAP, to just capture bytes around that alert for lateral movement firing. So we'll drop down to the lever category here. We'll make it a notice lever. Oops. And then let's see here. I skipped over one step. I don't have the second screen, unfortunately, but there's one more configuration where you would select the MITRE Bazaar package, which isn't displayed here, but it's just one more quick step. Apply the rule to the sensor, just as we saw with the previous rule. And then we can actually look at what this would look like. So what you see here is a log. It's a log in Splunk. It's a connection log, which is Corlight's equivalent of NetFlow. It's sort of the master record of every connection. It's like NetFlow on steroids. It's the master record of every connection. And it's often the pivot point, starting point for an investigation. And from here, you might pivot into a different protocol log related to that connection. But here, it's a connection log. And you can see there that directly embedded into this Corelight log, viewed in Splunk, is a field called SPCAP trigger, Smart PCAP trigger, which tells you that it's based on a notice trigger, i.e. the notice trigger we just configured on the prior screen. And right there, that URL is a very special field because that URL will directly retrieve the packet associated with that alert. And if you click that link, you can open it in a new tab, and you can actually download the PCAP directly to your desktop and open them in Wireshark automatically. So without leaving Splunk until you get to the packet analysis stage of the investigation, you can go directly to the packets that you need for this particular alert. And while I don't show an example here, if we configured it on the prior rule, right, the rule that wasn't alert-based, the rule that was looking at unknown TCP and UDP traffic, you could do the same thing, right? Imagine this is a connection log that isn't based on a notice trigger. It's just a connection log for a connection that is unknown UDP or TCP traffic. Well, that same SPCAP URL will be right there. And if you configured it to be a wide open capture, you can click that URL and download the entirety of that unknown, strange, and worth investigating connection right there in Wireshark. Performance ranges. So there's no free lunch, right? We have a lot of powerful technology capabilities on our sensors, but with every additional workload, of course, there is a performance tax, right, on the overall throughput capacity of our sensors, physical appliance sensors. So if you're just looking at the base Corelight kind of logging capability set, the AP3000 is a 25 gig sensor. If you enable some of our advanced collections and packages, it's a nominal 20 gigabit per second sensor. If you enable Suricata IDS on our platform, nominally 15 gigs. And if you enable smart PCAP on top of all of those technologies, you're looking at a 7 to 10 gigabit per second nominal throughput capacity sensor at the AP3000 running, again, smart PCAP, Suricata, advanced insights through Corlight's collections, and of course, the core traffic logging and file extraction capabilities of the platform. And we coach customers to expect to capture about 20% max of their ingest traffic. And performance will vary, right? It will vary according to traffic profile. It will vary according to a number of things, right? The amount of capture rules that you're running and the amount of traffic captured. So your mileage may vary, but those nominal capacities are kind of what we see in production environments when customers enable this material, or enable this technology, I should say. There is 100 rules max in our current smart PCAP offering, but we've yet to see a customer hit that. I think the max number of rules we've seen in the customer deployment so far is around 20, 25 rules. So that should be more than enough headroom for you to get started and build a bunch of really powerful packet capture rules. And we support up to 50 retrievals per minute as well. Storage, I mentioned it requires external storage. So Corelight is not directly storing the packets on Corelight hardware in this implementation, but we support a bunch of widely available Dell storage configurations, PowerVault servers with optional expansion trays that can take you up to 480 terabytes worth of storage at the high end, with lesser storage capacities at the low end, and kind of a good mix in between depending on your storage needs. So, you're buying Corlight's base subscription, you're buying the smart PCAP license, and you're buying external storage through your reseller. Corlight's 100% channel reseller driven business, so we do all of our business to the channel. So you just need to work with your preferred reseller to get this package assembled, and they'll help you do that. Q&A. So I went through a lot of material. We've got about 7 minutes left, and let's turn it over to questions. All right, we've got some questions here. Great. I'll start off with this question. Is there an industry standard or best practice for security purposes on the length of data stored, whether it be PCAP or log data? Good question. I'm not aware of a universal or widely agreed upon industry standard. I think the standard is as much as you can afford, right? Because I'll give you an extreme example. There is an organization in the government labs, US government lab space, who uses the open source version of Zeek, which is one of the key underlying technologies in Corlight's NDR platform. So they're an open source deployment. And they have, I believe, approaching a decade's worth of network traffic records, which means in theory, they can go back in time to a different decade to answer a question about a zero-day exploit that was surfaced 8 years later that might have affected legacy Windows systems, to see if that exploit was ever used in their environment a decade prior. That's really powerful. That's also really extreme. So to answer your question, is there a best practice or standard? I think the standard is as much as you can afford, because attacks, especially the sophisticated ones, tend to move low and slow. They tend to carefully get their way into an initial foothold, spread, laterally move, inventory the systems, and then ultimately exfiltrate or ransomware or whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. And that typically takes place on the order of weeks, months, or years in some cases, right? You looked at SolarWinds, and when that was disclosed in December of 2020, end of December 2020, best guesses from those in the security know was that it started at least 6 months prior, and probably farther back. And so organizations that had 6+ months of records, network records, were very well positioned when the SolarWinds hack broke to go back in time and to figure out, were we affected, and what was the scope, and what's the path for remediation. So, if you can afford it, I think you want months at least worth of network record activity, whether that's in log and or packet capture format. So that's a great question. Let's see here. Got another question here about POCs. Great question. How does a Corelight POC process work? Do we need to provide? You don't. we have POC kits where we will ship the kits to you with some of that, some Dell storage that I mentioned earlier that the platform Smart PCAP is configured to run with. So you get the sensor, you get the storage capacity, and you get the trial license of Corelight and the Smart PCAP license to demo it in your own environment. So we, yeah, we can ship you POC test kits where you've got everything you need. You don't need to provide your own storage. You can bring your own storage as well, which is something I might not have mentioned earlier. But as long as you have, Dell storage that that meets the specifications of our product, and you happen to have that handy, you can use that as well in your environment for packet capture storage. So that's a good question. All right, let's see. We've got 2 or 3 more minutes left. A couple more questions. How about? Oh, there's a good one. So can you clarify how Corelight deals with decryption? You mentioned not capturing packets for encrypted connections, but how does that work? Can Corelight decrypt traffic? So to answer the last part of the question, can Corelight decrypt traffic? No, not directly. That's not the intent of our platform. We have customers that decrypt traffic and send decrypted traffic streams to Corelight to process, but that's typically mediated at the packet broker layer, right? The decryption is happening at the packet broker layer. Corelight is a out of band kind of passive monitoring technology, which is to say that it's very hard for adversaries to discover it because it's not inline. And inline is typically where you're handling the decryption. So we can do a lot with encrypted traffic for you. We can give you logs about the encrypted sessions. We can give you advanced inference-based insights around what's actually happening behind the veil of encryption without breaking and inspecting it. And there's a lot of really powerful insight in there that can aid investigations. But if you are interested in decryption, that is something you're going to be wanting to accomplish before you send packets to Corlight's platform. So I hope that answers the question. You can certainly configure Corelight Smart PCAP to capture encrypted packets. And if you have those encryption keys on hand, you can download them to your desktop in Wireshark, decrypt them, and you're off and running. So, if you've got the encryption keys, by all means, you can use Corelight Smart PCAP to go selectively grab those encrypted streams so you can have them right there and you can decrypt them on your desktop. So that's also a use case that we could support there. Good question. All right, we've got 1 more minute left. We're basically at time. I'm trying to find a fast question here. All right, one last question. So with regards to the 100% capture policy that you showed, so yeah, that's the 100% visibility, the first capture rule that I showed you. How does that interact with the logs that are already capturing those traffic streams? Okay, so I think what that question is asking is, in the situation where you've configured that first rule that I showed you, and you're capturing, let's say, the first 2,000 bytes of all unencrypted traffic, how does that captured traffic interact with like the logs that are already being generated for that traffic? The way that you would access that captured traffic would be through the connection log, which is that master connection log, sort of like NetFlow on steroids that every connection gets that Corelight sees. So you would get a DNS log, and you would pivot from the Corelight DNS log over to the connection log associated with that DNS connection. And from the con log, you would have that URL, that PCAP URL that I showed you, that would be sitting there in the con log related to that DNS query. And so you'd have both the DNS log, and from there you pivot to the con log, and from there you download the packets also associated with that DNS connection. So I think hopefully that answers your question. Great questions. Sorry, didn't get to all of them today, but I will try to follow up with you afterwards. I've got your email. Oh, just another one popped in real quick. Yes, slide deck. I mentioned at the beginning, recorded. Slide deck will be made available, so you can review this or share it with your team members. Absolutely. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to us, info@corelight.com, or you can hit me up as well. I'm just John, J-O-H-N, at corelight.com. If you've got questions as well, happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until we meet again, thanks. Bye-bye.